next speaker is quite an interesting one. His name is Nelson Billington, and Nelson Billington is the account director, corporate director of the Belmond organization. He represents the group which have 46 iconic hotels, trains, and river cruises to companies and embassies and associations. They're quite really big. Nelson has also advised in big research programs in terms of customer relationship. He was also formerly director of client and operations at the Miles Ahead, a luxury travel concierge. He's also done a lot of work in terms of travel and leisure. He's also featured in Travel Weekly and past speaker at the New York Times travel show. Nelson is quite very experienced and is going to share his experience today in terms of hospitality and protocol and what's the relationship in that regard. He's going to really do a lot of justice to that. So Nelson graduated from the Cornell University School of Hotel Administration, and he is really going to tell us more today. I welcome Nelson Billington.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Thank you all for joining us this morning, this evening. We're really happy that you're here. Got a little presentation that I'm going to share here. Before I start that, our last speaker, Honorable Salwa, had just so many great points to share that I resonated with. So before I get into it, her points on security, logistics, and etiquette, I think are just so critical. They're critical in our hotels, and they're critical for the work that you do. So really want to touch on that a little bit more in my presentation here, and hope we can have some time afterwards to answer your questions as well. So I have a brief little video here. It's just 20 seconds long. It gives you a little overview of what we like to call the wonderful world of Belmond. I'm going to dive in a few minutes together to tell you a little bit about our collection, about the intersection of diplomacy and hospitality, and then really where we go from there and how the two are really intersected. So we'll play this and we'll go from there. Terrific. Perfect. So Belmond, as was mentioned, we have 45 hotels, trains, and river cruises. We're very pleased to be a sponsor of this World Protocol Matters conference, and grateful for the opportunity to share with you all. Belmond has been around for a number of years. Our hotels are older and iconic. In 2019, Belmond was purchased by the Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy Group, which is a French luxury goods conglomerate. And when LVMH bought Belmond, they did so because they wanted to move into the experiences business. So many of you probably know LVMH for their handbags, for Tiffany jewelry, for Bulgari perfumes or jewelry, for Rimowa luggage, and many of the different businesses that they are in. But when they came to buy Belmond, the idea was to really innovate on our heritage brand, which is LVMH's one of their great pillars. And together, over the last couple of years, Belmond and LVMH have come up with a shared vision for our company, which is to be the world's most desirable luxury travel brand. We define that in a number of different ways. And as I show you some pictures here, we're going to talk to that and kind of weave in this role of diplomacy and history into our company. So we start here. This picture here is our hotel in Santa Barbara, California, in the United States. For becoming the world's most desirable luxury travel brand, we really have to focus on our operations. As Honorable Salwa said, focusing on the details is so critical. Looking at how can we create guest experiences, no matter the case of why someone's staying in one of our hotels. If they're coming for a meeting, if they're coming for a retreat, they're coming with their family, we have to focus on creating experiences for them that matter to them and that they can't find anywhere else. It's using the physical spaces that we have, the gardens, the rooms, the food and beverage experiences to really tailor that and to make it meaningful and a venue where people really want to gather. Becoming the world's most desirable luxury travel brand means continuing to invest in our assets to ensure that they are safe and secure when people come and stay with us, that we have top of the line technology in our hotels. It means renovations and improvements, such here is our hotel in Lima, which is right in the central business district in the heart of Lima in Peru, this cosmopolitan city. Becoming the world's most desirable luxury travel brand means telling you, organizers of events, our history. Because really Belmond's history, the history of our properties, is the world's history. And so this storytelling element is very important to us, and hopefully will be helpful to you when you're working with our properties and convening meetings and getting to really work with us. Just sort of a few interesting things to share. This is our hotel here in London, the Cadogan, which is where Oscar Wilde was arrested. One of our hotels in Florence served as Napoleon Bonaparte's headquarters. One of our barges in France was seized by the Germans during World War II, taken to Corsica and used as a part of the war effort. Several of our properties are 12th, 13th, and 15th century monasteries, one with a fresco from Michelangelo on the exterior. So these are culturally significant buildings, and we see the venue very much as one part of our participation in the intersection of diplomacy and hospitality. This here is our hotel in Cape Town, Mount Nelson. For us, food and beverage is also an incredibly important component. And this was something that Honorable Salwa spoke about as well, is having a chef is one thing, but vetting that to the unique cultural differences and sensitivities of whomever is staying in the property is super important to us. It's creating international cuisine that appeals to people from across the world. Because really, we, at the very end of the day, need to make people feel comfortable so that they can convene a dialogue, so they can share ideas together. So the food and beverage element is another way that we must work to be the best, most desirable luxury travel brand. And this here is our hotel in Rio, the Copacabana Palace. And the sort of final element on becoming the world's most desirable luxury travel brand means becoming a venue for diplomatic professionals to convene meetings. We have in the past, but we have an opportunity to do that even more in the future and to really learn from folks like yourself, which is part of the reason I'm so happy to be here, is there's so many takeaways that we can have learning from protocol and diplomatic professionals and understanding what's important. Because in each step of our customer journey, as we call it, learning what our customer needs are and building solutions based on those needs is how we get there. So really excited for what the future will hold. This hotel had a neat experience a couple of years ago during the Olympics in 2016. This served as the base for many of the VIPs that came to Rio and really was a gathering place for the city during that important world event. It cultivated relationships, friendships, and excitement for the city, which was something that we were really pleased to play a part in. And I think, we'll get to this in just a moment. So over the last couple of years with this COVID situation, the world has become more fractured, apart. People can't get along with one another. And I believe that some part of this is due to the lack of physical interaction. People are isolated, they're apart, and that builds polarization. And it's something that it's very sad and unfortunate. So I think the role of hospitality is to convene people together. You're not just a name, you're an email address, but really you're a human being. And we provide venues and people who can help cultivate those relationships. And I think our role week seriously in doing that, in really fostering dialogue that can create solutions and help people around the world. So I look at this sort of in three ways. People in hospitality, we welcome everybody into our doors, whether we own a restaurant, whether we're in the hotel business, whether we're a driver or a pilot, wherever we are in this ecosystem, we welcome people in from around the world. You don't have to be in a wealthy country to come into our doors. And we really take that equalizer of differences seriously, because we think when we accept people, when we welcome diversity across hospitality, people feel comfortable coming in and sharing their ideas. So we must continue to be that. We must continue to welcome people from around the world in our doors and do that fairly. Because when people come in and they feel comfortable, we give them an environment where we recognize the details, where we learn about their sense of what's important to them, religious, cultural, political, and we act on their unexpressed preferences and wishes. We allow them to change hearts and minds through our actions. We play a small role, but it's an important role in helping steward conversation and dialogue. And with that, hopefully, we help to change the world through building accords, building relationships and friendships, which I think is just so important. It doesn't always have to be in a formal meeting. It could be in a retreat. It could be in a one-on-one conversation. But our physical spaces, our people must work to really foster this dialogue. And we must do it all the time, realizing that it's not always something planned where accords can be brokered. So for those of you sort of less familiar with the travel and tourism space, I just thought I'd share a couple of stats here, which I think are quite, quite impactful. So in 2019, the travel and tourism business represented 10% of global GDP. So it was a $9.2 trillion industry, and we employed 300 plus million people. 334 million people were employed in travel and tourism across the world. And 1 in 4 new jobs in 2019 was created. Of course, this took a hit during the pandemic, but it's starting to come back in earnest. We've seen travel continue to pick up. And this ecosystem, just sort of, as you think about its impact, there's so many different people, drivers who bring diplomats together to a meeting and act with the utmost confidentiality, because oftentimes, as you think about it, someone has long trips from place to place, and they may be in a car alone. Who are they talking to? They're talking to the driver, or they're talking to the security guard. They're sharing what they're thinking, and that person is upholding their confidence and discretion. They get to a hotel and they're meeting with a bellhop or a waiter or a front desk agent. They're in a meeting and being served by a banquet server, a boat captain, a pilot. So our business is wide and diverse, and it includes people from really all walks of life. So really believe that these the hospitality and diplomacy are connected integrally through through many different areas. And so I conclude with what I'll call my sort of give back moment. So we operate in our company, Belmond operates in the luxury space. We create experiences in hotels and in trains and river barges around the world. But what I like to say is we take care of the arbiters of justice, the people who make decisions. I think what's important is in hospitality, we also take care of the recipients of justice. And someone who does that really well is Jose Andres. For those who are familiar in the States, Jose created a nonprofit called World Central Kitchen. World Central Kitchen's mission is to change the world through the power of food. And Jose likes to sort of think of himself, or others people describe him as a diplomat who is a chef. And Jose goes into disaster zones to cook for people, realizing that at the core, again, back to this needs assessment, at the core, when people are struggling, they need food. they want a hot meal. They want someone to come in and cook for them. It's a very basic need, but he was finding in many of these disaster zones that really the idea of good food was missing. And so Jose created World Central Kitchen. Jose is a restaurateur who has a number of fine dining concepts. He has 3 Michelin star restaurants. He trained under Ferran Andrea at El Bulli. But so he takes care of the arbiters of justice, the people that we're working with, the diplomats. But he has not forgotten to really take care of the recipients of justice, the people who are struggling and who are in need. And I think we can all take inspiration from what Jose is doing, and we can really take his mission and the mission of our industry to really change the world together. So thank you for your time. I think I'm right on about 13, 14 minutes. So happy to spend a couple minutes answering questions. These are my contact details here. As was mentioned in the introduction, my role is to be a steward across our hotels, but really to facilitate these relationships. If you're looking to have an event, one of our properties, if you have a delegation who needs to host a retreat at one of our hotels, if you want to get away on, you're working with a diplomat and their spouse and they want to get away on vacation, these are the types of things that I can work across our whole collection, understanding again that focus on detail, that focus on etiquette, the focus on security. Those really, and logistics is my forte. So would be delighted to help explain more about our properties and work together. So thanks so much for your time. It really is wonderful to be here.
Thank you, Nelson. That was really, really robust in terms of all the areas you've mentioned, and they're quite really interesting. And I believe there'll be questions for you. So while we look, I think there are a few questions there. Ladonna, I don't know if you've, there are quite a few questions.
Yes, I was looking at them. I would like to say, it's quite interesting the way we think about protocol and just how all the touch points really connect. Someone may not understand or realize why or how a hotel brand or a luxury brand talks about it, but he said it with just creating these experiences that help also extend the message that we want to portray or send across through our engagements, and that helps. One of the questions that we have, and I will tell you, he did talk about some of the things with the culinary experience. We will have a discussion. We'll hear from one of our speakers later in the week who will talk about that. And one of the questions is the top challenges in culinary diplomacy, which Nelson identifies during his personal experience in the hospitality industry. Nelson, can you talk about maybe one of those top challenges that you maybe identified?
Yeah, definitely. I think this is sort of an interesting one. Many of our hotels are located in more remote destinations. They're located on islands or away from big city centers. And so for us, sourcing of products is quite challenging, especially when people have specific needs and when those are short term. So you can imagine if we get word that a delegation is coming 72 hours before they arrive, and they have specific needs around types of tea that they're drinking or food or diets, sourcing that in a really short period of time is quite challenging. We're usually able to pull it off, but modes of transportation to get food in on islands tends to be barge or airplane. And brands that are familiar in one country are not necessarily in another. And with supply chain shortages, that sort of adds a whole nother element. So I think sourcing is probably the biggest one, but it's also designing our menus in our restaurants to really to appeal to a wide audience. To have a menu that's narrow, so people don't have too many choices, but then to really encourage folks to feel comfortable ordering something that they want. With our hotels, we're really operating in the top luxury segments. We should be able to give just about anything that somebody wants, have our culinary teams trained in how to cook that and ready to go. If somebody says, you know, I really don't want this type of fish. I want bronzino and I want it grilled with a little bit of lemon and olive oil. It's something that we should be able to execute on with ease and quickly. And so I think the sourcing and then really the ordering, and it's training our staff to be comfortable with folks that may be looking for something else.
Okay,
Oh,
that's
really
good.
good point. Yes.
Yeah, there's another question, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we can take one more question. There's another question from Donatus Irogu. I think that's from Nigeria. He says to Nelson, what role did protocol and diplomacy play during COVID-19 and the ongoing war between Ukraine and Russia? Anyways, protocol is more discussed in public sectors than in private sectors. Maybe just your thought, Nelson, because we're just not sure what you think.
Sure. Yeah, I think during COVID, it's interesting because the guests who were staying in our hotels changed. In some of our city centers and a few hotels that I highlighted, we still had diplomatic people coming from different countries. The reason they were coming often changed. So I think sort of again assessing why is somebody traveling, and how can we make sure that we're taking care of them in a unique environment. So again, it sort of goes back to safety. What are they looking for in the moment during the COVID situation? They weren't looking necessarily for a lot of face-to-face interaction. So we built an app that they can communicate and chat with the hotel for needs. And so we limited face-to-face contact, contactless, extra cleaning of rooms and sanitization and those types of things. With the global conflicts with Ukraine and Russia and the like, we have to be mindful of we went through an interesting period where we wanted to be mindful of how we were marketing ourselves because people were struggling in the world. And so I think we have to continually be culturally aware of what's happening and how our messaging mixes with what's happening in the world. And so that's something we're constantly aware of, is that we want to be mindful of how we portray our properties. Because really we, to many people, are a retreat, we're a reprieve, we welcome people in for holidays. And when people are struggling in the world, we want to be mindful of how we communicate that so that it doesn't come off in the wrong way. So it's something we're continually mindful of and want to be sensitive to all of our guests and those around the world who aren't our guests, who may see our marketing and understand that we are supporting those who are in need and really, like Jose, bridging that gap between arbiters and recipients.